I'm Tanya, the host of The Comeback Seat, where every setback deserves a comeback. And today we have Josh in the comeback seat, and he is going to share his story about being an athlete to going to having a broken leg with 3 ACL surgeries and possibly not returning to sports. But instead, he came back stronger and a state champion. So today we have his story about belief, heart, and never giving up. Welcome, Josh, to the comeback seat.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. You're our youngest guest so far. You're 19 years old.
I'm glad to hear it.
And for listeners that are listening today, you are 19, as I just said. You're very young and you're off to college. But outside of sports, who is Josh Grossman?
So people always ask me that, and I make sports such a big part of my life because I love it. Even when I didn't get to play, I tracked it all the time and I watched it on TV, and I took more of a coaching approach. When I first got hurt, I got my first coaching gig at the school. So I got to transform from the player side to a different side of sports, but still got to involve myself in it. But I love my family. I love playing games. I've always been competitive. So even when I couldn't play physical sports, I was playing different board games. I love hanging with my friends, and I like lifting and doing all that stuff, and hang out with my girlfriend all the time.
You're healthy. You're
I'm
living the
doing good now.
dream. You grew up at Blanchette, or did you start there your high school year?
So I started there in 6th grade. So they have 6th through 12th, and I went that whole time.
And then Blanchette, I know a little bit about Blanchette because my son grew up at Salem Academy, so it was our rivalry here in Salem, Oregon. It's a Christian-based school. And so you started in 6th grade playing sports there, or were you on a traveling team as well? Or did you just...
So growing up, I played sports for different places, trying to figure out where was the best spot for me. Because I started with a group that was ran through the church, and it was fun, but it got a little bit too easy. And so my parents tried to expand the ways that I could be involved with sports. I was never allowed to play tackle football until I got to middle school. And only one parent needed to sign the permission slip. So I finally got my dad to do it. Mom always refused. But in 5th grade, I played for my first tournament basketball team through an old buddy my dad had from high school. And then 6th grade was the year I started playing for the school. And I would dual wield with the tournament team and the school. So I'd play basketball for the school, and then I'd have a tournament team on the side. And then same thing for baseball and football too, which football I was mainly just for the school because football's a little more physical. But the one year that COVID canceled our season, I had a club team that I played for.
And you play all 3 sports, and which one was your favorite?
People always ask me that because they told me I was going to need to pick at some point, and I could never pick. It was just whichever one I was playing at the time because they're also different, but they all had their own thing with it.
And did you get hurt in each sport, or was it just basketball and football?
I've never been hurt in baseball. That's why my mom always wanted me to pick that one. So when I broke my ankle, that was during basketball. And then the first ACL surgery was because of football. The second one, I got unlucky.
Oh, how did you get unlucky?
So it was the day I got released. The doctor said I was cleared to go back to everything. Football practice started in 2 weeks. So I was at youth group that night, and my buddy, he was challenging me to these activities that I haven't done I had done them for PT, but I was finally cleared to do them to compete. And so he wanted to compete with me. So he told me that he could jump higher than me and touch higher on the glass than I could. And so we challenged each other at that. So I did a 2-foot broad jump just as high as I could. And I came down and my knee caved in. And so I looked at my other friend because my other friend actually had ACL surgery before I did. He hurt his in football as well. And I looked at him because I knew he had a similar feeling. And I was like, that was not good. And I already knew in the moment that something was really bad. And so I was panicking a little bit on the way to the car before I drove home and told my dad.
And are you guys still friends to this day?
Yes, he's actually my girlfriend. I've been dating my girlfriend for over 3 years now. And I've always been best friends with her cousin. Okay. So we grew up going to church together, and he was in my kindergarten class.
So you guys are going to be friends for life?
So he's 7 months post-op of his second tear. So he actually tore his again during his senior year of football.
And so did you think, so here you are, you just got back, released, you tore your ACL, and then you have to go back to the doctors. And did you at that point think you went return to sports at that point? Or was it the third ACL? Take us
That
back
was
to that.
the time that it retore was a bit crushing because that first session of physical therapy through that whole 10 or 11 months, whatever it was something I hadn't experienced before. I had always assumed that my sports would be full of a couple small injuries of some sprained ankles or whatever, but I had never assumed it would progress into what it did. I was friends with our family was friends with the president of Blanchette. And
Okay.
so when I first joined he was the reason we went to the school. And when I first joined him, I said, I'm bringing the first boys state championship to Blanchette. Like me and my
Okay.
couple friends that I knew, we played sports together growing up. And that was our goal because Blanchette boys had never won a state championship. And so that was just something that was always on our mind. And we trained for it together and all that. So that was always my thought. And then the broken ankle happened. And it was like, I found my way around it. That's about a 4-month healing process. And then the ACL tear is different because it's a full year of recovery. And so my plans were shaken up at that point.
Okay.
And then physical therapy
And
sucks. And
so,
so that full year goes by and then it happens again.
and that's your sophomore year?
Yeah. So my freshman year is when I broke my ankle. I broke it halfway through the basketball season. So about January.
Okay. And you still played a little bit of sports then?
So I wasn't able to play baseball in the spring. So I picked up golf and I played golf for the school in a cast for the first 2 weeks and then in a boot for the next 3 weeks.
So you always found something to keep your mind going.
Yep.
And now during your PT, was that during, I won't do a whole show on COVID, but was that during the COVID time doing PT?
I think it was towards the end of it. I had to wear a mask everywhere I went.
Sure.
I went to PT, I had to wear a mask. And it's like, so there was less people in the office at the time.
Yes.
It was not very crowded. And that's really what I remember is having to wear a mask every single time.
Because mine was during the COVID and it was so hard to get doctor appointments. It was hard to get rehab scheduled. It was hard to do all these hoops. But you found a key ingredient and his name is Min. And I don't know how to say his last name, but it starts with an N, Ygen. You found a perfect physical therapist in town who is one of the best. How do you feel about Min and what he did for you?
Min, I don't even want to think about where I would be without Min. I bother Min way too much with the amount of questions I ask him. But what he did for me was it's too much to express. So we came across Min actually working at Min's friend, Aaron Higgs at Resilient Human Performance.
Okay.
And so I was working out at Aaron's after I broke my ankle. And Min comes in and works out there every so often. And so Min would look at me when I was working out, and apparently he was judging me from afar, and he was reading my body and the way that my body works from a distance. And he could tell that from my workouts that I had extreme hypermobility in my joints. And so he could tell that was going to lead to some problems. Aaron knew it was going to lead to some problems. So I was hitting the training really hard. And we didn't catch it soon enough for it to make a difference. That's what both of them think ultimately caused all my injuries was the hypermobility in my joints. But I just didn't get to meet them in time to be able to prevent all of this from happening. So after I tore my ACL the first time, I still hadn't ever formally met Min. So I went through the normal physical therapy system that first year. And to me and my dad, who's never experienced anything like this, to us, it was just totally normal. And we assumed that everything was going right because we didn't have anything to compare it to. And then after I retore it again, which I didn't technically re-tear it, the surgery never failed. It's the new ACL stretched to the point to where it wasn't functionable anymore. So they had to cut it and re-tear it themselves. So that Min was pointing towards was failed PT because it wasn't strong enough to support the new ligament.
Which happens.
So then that second time meeting Min, I was at the gym with Aaron trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And Min had me do this exercise on the wall where had one leg on this box and I had to push off all I had to do was, my back was on a scooter. All I had to do was push off the box at a slight angle. That's all I had to do. And then everything was fine. And I could not, for the life of me, push off this box. It was the most simple thing you could ever imagine. And I absolutely could not push off this box. And it was so frustrating. I tried for about 30 minutes and
Wow.
they were just
You
sitting
were
there.
determined.
And they were all just sitting there laughing at me. And then they would come in and show you how easy it is. And it was just like, it's the kind of relationship you have with them because it's just back and forth. They're challenging you, which I needed. So it was awesome.
Yeah, one simple thing, and he was able to see where you were off.
From that moment, he pretty much told me that I had an ACL tear and that I was going to need to eventually get back into surgery. So I went in. And from that point on, I was able to see Min as my physical therapist. We realized how bad other physical therapists can be. I learned that I was on the same ACL rehab program as a 77-year-old grandma.
Oh my gosh.
And so as a 16-year-old at the time, trying to return back to a sports life, learning that I was on the same program as an old lady how's that even possible? How's that the system? It seems like it would set somebody up like me up for failure.
Right.
So that was really frustrating to learn because that was a whole year I dedicated of time, energy, and hard work into these exercises to getting back. And it just didn't pay off because it seemed like the system was failing me a little bit.
Well, you were trusting a physical rehab place and you were thinking this was the right way, and they really didn't have your best interests. I hate to say that, but they didn't have your best interest as a.
I would have no way of knowing otherwise if what they were doing was helping me or not. So I completed all my exercises. I did them all the time. Traditional physical therapy gives you five exercises at a time and tells you to do it 40 times that day. And so I dedicated a lot of time into it, way more time than Min's recovery program actually took of me. But I passed all the tests. I passed all of their benchmarks they had for me to hit so that I could return. And then the only test that the doctor made me do was a three-legged, like a three-step hop on one leg. So he made me do it on my right leg. I had to jump 3 steps and be controlled. And then on my bad leg, I had to do the same thing. And I did it. I completed it in his office. And so he said I was free. He said I was done. What I learned later was what logically didn't make sense was we weren't in a space where I could test the limits of how close to the left leg was to the right leg because we were in a small cubicle office. And that really isn't the best test for deciding whether or not I can come back or not. So then I started the second surgery with Min, and that was just so awesome because when I came out of surgery, my left leg had shrank to 18 inches.
So it was pretty little
in diameter, and it was tiny. I had to hear all the time about how little my legs were. And my right leg had shrank drastically too because I had spent so much time on the couch and all that. So I wasn't using either one of my legs. So my right leg shrank down to 19 inches. And within 6 weeks working with Min, I added 5 inches to my leg, both legs. And that was and his physical therapy was totally different.
Yes.
So it's crazy. So at the physical therapist office, the first time, they'd give me 5 or 6 exercises to do every single day for a crazy amount of sets. And then Min gives you this one exercise a week, tells you to do it daily, and it only takes maybe 30 minutes. But all he had me do was sit in a lunge. I was sitting and holding a lunge. I was sitting and holding a lunge, and I would watch how my body reacts, and the technique that he would perfectly set up would cause my body to completely freak out. And it was just that little thing, and it was activating my quads and retraining my brain to do all these things. All those things were foreign language to me because the other physical therapist didn't mention anything like that. He didn't know my body type. He didn't know I had hypermobility. He didn't know that I was quad dominant, so I wasn't activating my hamstrings. So I learned that by me being quad dominant, that when I would jump, your body's supposed to transfer the compression of the landing from your quads to your glutes to your hamstrings. Mine, without activating my hamstrings ever, it goes straight from the quad to my joints. And so that strain on the knee is what caused all my problems. But all of that's information that I wouldn't have ever learned without Min. Bothered him all the time with questions, and it was awesome.
Well, what would you tell someone looking for a physical therapist? How would you go about doing that? If you could rewind and Min wasn't there and you guys were going to this physical therapy place, how would you have changed that if you could do it all over again? Obviously, you'd want to find Min, but how would you change was it your parents that was trying to find someone and then you just went along, or?
Well, we went to the surgeon and we asked him for a place nearby, I think. My dad was
Okay.
mainly trying to figure it out because
You
I
don't
was
have to give
15.
names.
So
It's just
I was 15. I had no idea what's going on.
you're just
So
along for
we
the
went to the
ride.
doctor and he recommended a place up in Portland where my doctor's office was. And we live in Kaiser, so we weren't going to
So
do
you were
that.
having to go what 2-3 times up to Portland? Your mom and dad?
My mom would never really went.
Oh,
She never went to bear the bad news, and she had work the other time, so it was just
yeah.
me and my dad. Usually, we'd make the drive up to Portland, and so he recommended a place up in Portland, and then it was the same company, different location that we were able to find in Kaiser, right by our house, because I was going to need to go there 3 times a week for a few weeks. So
Well, I would take videos when I was in rehab, and I was just so frustrated because I'd watch these videos online in Florida and go, oh my gosh, I want to do that. And here we are in Oregon. And I would take those videos and say, I want to do this today. And I would just, that's how I would advocate for my physical rehab is this is how I want to push my body today. Can we do this? And that seemed to work, but there was times where they were offended. And I was just like, you're not in my body. You don't know what I'm going through. And this is what I want to do. So
yeah,
psychologically, as a young athlete, you just dealt with COVID shutdowns, and here you are trying to get healthy to go back to something that you've known all your life in sports, being a 3-time All-Star, or now you add golf in there. You have all these sports that you're into. Psychologically, you have your beliefs, your prayer, your family. What were you thinking? Was this some dark days? Did you get mental therapy, or?
it was different because every day I would wake up, I would go to school, I'd go to practice, and then I'd come home and I would watch some sports team on TV. It was really all I did. I never usually had homework, so I would just be able to focus on sports. I would play sports video games. So it was just that was what all of my stuff was centered around. And I had never really planned, I gave up my dream of being a professional athlete long before all this. But it was that competitive nature of me and the love for all the sports. I never ever want to be done with sports entirely. It means too much to me. So when it was, but what I learned initially was that I rooted my identity of who I was into sports. And there outside of that, I didn't really have anything. I never was forced to reflect upon that because sports was never taken away from me. So learning that and then having it gone, I had to completely change everyday life. And it was something that you couldn't have prepared for. So it definitely took a toll on me. Some days hit a lot harder than others.
Did
When
you
it
have an
would be
attitude, or did you walk around with an attitude sometimes?
surprisingly, no,
So no one wanted to punch you in the face?
not from what I've heard. Other than maybe my brother, who mom made do some extra things for me all the time. We shared a room, so he had to clean up more, and he's really bad at that.
So that'll be held over your head for the rest of your
Yeah, so
life
my
because
brother maybe wanted to punch me in the face a few times, but he still does. So what's the difference?
I still want to punch my
Um,
sister in the face every once in a while.
so,
It's
but
siblings.
I ended up actually getting, because I've asked people similar things, and they've always made sure to bring it up. Uh, they were always really like, they were honestly impressed by the way I was handling it. And it was never a goal of mine to try and put on a smiley face or to be happy. But after it didn't even take me long for me to have a smile on my face. Those first few weeks sucked. And
Mm-hmm.
it was frustrating. And I didn't understand why it would happen to me. And I didn't understand what I did to deserve with that. And so what I did for those first several weeks was I was wrestling with God. And I've never really had to do that before. I've just accepted life the way it was. And I was at a point, I was at a crossroad where, well, my identity actually isn't in this because this is gone and I'm still here. My personality is still here and I'm still here. So what is it really? So then it set off on this separate journey other than just physical, to where I was trying to learn more about myself in that way. So I never really struggled with a bunch of big mental episodes where it would last weeks or months. People would always tell me that I felt like I was holding myself together almost for the people around me,
Yeah.
because people would constantly come up and they'd tell me how sorry they feel for me. And it was like they were really sad. And I was totally heartbroken. Sports was so much to me, but it was almost like the amount of support that I had around me, and the people I chose to surround myself with, and my parents surrounded me with, and my family being how great that they are. Those people, because I had that, they were sad for me, so I didn't have to be. So it's I gave away my burden of sadness, and they were just like, well, then I'll feel bad for you. And with that weight lifted off, it allowed me to focus on what I needed to do, which was get healthy, figure out who I really am, and how can I come back from this. So that was awesome.
That's quite the
Yeah, so
journey
that was
itself.
it was just special. On a huge, I went on the closest I've ever felt with God was during that time, because I was trying to figure out who I was, and I had no idea. So I got baptized during I think it was my first, it might have been my second surgery, but I got baptized, and that was awesome. This was probably a big factor, but my current girlfriend, we were talking throughout that summer when I had just gotten back from my broken ankle, and we were getting really close. And then, so the introduction to our relationship was during probably one of the hardest times of my life. Well, absolutely the hardest time of my life.
You're 19
And
years or at the
so
time.
having that was unique. You don't always get to walk into one of those relationships during that time. So it was really helpful. I don't know why the heck she stayed around. The first time we hung out, I was in a wheelchair and she had to push me around. And
She
she
saw
showed
you
up,
at your worst.
and it's exactly. So I must have had something going for me, but I have no idea what it is. And
It's your
so
personality. We're telling you.
that's how we started. And it's really unique because you don't usually start a relationship in the toughest point of your life, but it happened, and
Sometimes you do,
it's awesome.
right?
And so she was awesome during that whole thing. I would never be somebody who really opened up too much. I didn't
Yeah,
like showing emotions, and I didn't like all that touchy feely stuff, but it came more
sure.
naturally at this point to her specifically. The only people I've ever really opened up to that much were her and my dad. And so that was a new thing for me. And that was super helpful. So when those moments, because they do hit, like that acceptance moments or the why me moments, even when you're doing pretty good, those moments hit randomly,
Oh, for sure.
and they still do. There's
Yeah,
things that, man, this could have gone differently. But having that support from her and having that support from my family and just all the people around me, regardless, I'm going to be okay. She never got to really, she liked me for me. And that was a big thing for me. And it helped me create my new identity, because I wasn't a good athlete when she was with me. I was a
yeah,
guy in a wheelchair. It was like I had never been at a lower point, but something about me, aside from sports, was still fun. And something about me was still
sure.
lively and energetic and happy and funny.
Well, and that's
So
what
it
you
was,
want. You want a partner to fall in love with you, not the outer good looks of an athlete, but inside, and your faith is very strong. So you want to have a partner that has their faith together too. And being in a wheelchair doesn't define you, but it makes you guys grow stronger together. I'm not a counselor by any means, but have you seen the movie with Chris Norton, the football player?
I don't know. I'd have to know the name of it.
You'll have to watch the Chris Norton. It's a documentary, and I just recommended this one too. Soul on Fire. The when you said why me, these are movies, true story movies, and the why me and the women that come into their lives are amazing, because she met you at a time where you're saying why me, and it just shows this history of you guys growing together, and you most likely will get married after being together through all this, but in 3 years, and you're 19 and your faith, and I'm assuming you're going to get engaged in a couple of years, but we won't go down that road. Anyways, the why me is a really, she's the one because she loved you at a hard time in your life.
It was pretty special. And
Yeah,
that mental health side of things is just, I always, whenever things were tough, I've always thought it was best to find other things to do.
Golf?
because as long as I'm constantly working, then I'm constantly growing in some way. And so I'd always thought that way. And
So
when
if you
I
were to give advice to another 19-year-old that might be having a hard time in their life right now and they're having a really bad setback, what would your advice be to them?
I would say the biggest thing is to sit back alone and just think about how can I make myself better from this situation? Because regardless of who you are, if you had an injury or whatever, there are going to be things in life that suck. There are different measurements for everybody. I could think of a lot more stories that are a lot worse than mine that people have had to fight through. And it's the approach to that that I think sets you up for success. And what I thought worked best for me was being able to have with myself is stuff that I didn't used to do. I never used to just be by myself and think and plan for who I wanted to be and how I wanted to get there. So I had a lot of time by myself because my dad was working, my friends were at school, and I was at home after surgery, and my mom was at work. And so it was like just me. And it was me setting goals for myself and deciding who I wanted to be. I gave myself something to work for every day. That's by setting those goals, those were lofty goals. Lofty goals I probably that nobody really expected me to hit. I was told all the time by a lot of people and by the internet, everybody says, once this happens to you, you don't come back the same. You're weaker than you used to be, and your future's over. It's such a dark intake of information you get. And people say the opposite too.
But
The
that may have
dark
motivated
comments,
you.
the dark comments usually hit harder for me.
And,
The dark comments always hit me in a different way than a compliment.
and that
And
made you
so
come back stronger, right?
that it totally made me come back stronger. So those hateful comments or those people that would put me down saying, you're not going to be the same, you're not going to come back. And that was like, oh, well,
No
watch
way.
me. And it was like that moment allowed me to set myself up for success by setting goals. And those goals, they were lofty. I wanted to come back to sports. I wanted to make a difference on those sports teams. I wanted to reach the 1,000-pound club at school. I wanted to win the golden dumbbell. And those were all goals that I had had my eyes set on in seventh grade. And instead of letting this change my goals, I just decided, wouldn't it be so much cooler if I did it now? And so that was my goal, and it was awesome. I got to work at it every day. There was something I could do for it every day.
And what year did you go to state? What year you came back stronger? Was that your senior year or junior year?
Yeah. So I had my third procedure before senior year, so it wasn't a full reconstruction. So I had bone overgrowth the top of the screw, and it was cutting away at my ACL, so it was shredding off little bits.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and so they found that they had never really seen it before. And Min had his theory of why it happened. He said it was Wolf's Law. He said the fact that I had put my body through so much to come back stronger, it came back so strong that the bone was healing over the growth of the screw. And it caused so much, I put my body through so much that it recovered too well that it ended up hurting me a little bit.
Isn't that
Um,
interesting? And
I
that's
mean,
called Wolf's Law. That's men's.
that's what Min's theory was. The doctor
Yeah.
said, I have no idea. He knew how to treat it because it was a bone overgrowth and it was cutting at my ACL. So he knew how to fix it, but he didn't really have an idea of what caused it. So that was before senior year. So I got to go back. I was the starting quarterback senior year for the football team. That was awesome. We didn't have quite the success I would have hoped, but there was a lot of factors at play there. Me and my buddies had a pretty good season in terms of us on a personal level, and that was awesome.
And
I
you played.
decided I played the whole season and I didn't get hurt. Mom was sitting there squeezing water bottles and freaking out, but I didn't get hurt. I decided not to go back to basketball, but not because I couldn't. It had
Right.
nothing to do with why I couldn't. I made the team. I was out there for tryouts, and I just decided what were the other goals that I had in mind. I wanted to hit the 1,000-pound club, and I wanted to win the golden dumbbell. And I felt like for me, that's a bigger personal win than making it back to basketball. When I made it back for football, I was like, all right, I proved everybody wrong. I made it back, and I did it.
Check. Yeah,
I
I got
checked that
that
off
check.
the list. So then I had the
Okay.
other goals, and it was I wanted to win the golden dumbbell, and I
What is
wanted to
that?
make the 1,000-pound club. So the golden dumbbell is an award at my school that they give to one person in every graduating class. And It's the teacher picks it himself, and it's what he has seen from his student effort wise, time and energy spent in the weight room or outside of that to make himself better physically. And so I never stopped taking a weights class. Even when I was hurt, I would go. I was on the couch, I was learning. I was constantly doing my PT in there. And so I never gave up in the weight room. I spent so much more time in there than I would have ever expected because I needed to move twice as fast as I would have if I just had a smooth sail throughout high school. So I had always wanted to win the golden dumbbell because to me it was always a prestigious achievement for anybody who won it, because I would see the older seniors on stage waving around their dumbbell that they won because they put in a lot of work that sometimes goes unnoticed. Not everybody, there's nobody else in the gym and you're in there by yourself. It's just you and the teacher. After school, you're staying after. And it's one of those extra effort awards that
Okay.
to me was a big deal because of how much extra effort I put into it. And
Okay.
then the 1,000 pound club was a combination of your bench, squat, and deadlift to equal 1,000 pounds. And
Jeez.
Min set me up after I was done with physical therapy. This is when I started bothering Min with way too many questions. And he was very generous to answer. He actually gave me a powerlifting program and a diet to follow. I put on, I was 155 pounds coming out of surgery, and I was 198 pounds when I hit the 1,000 pound club.
And that was all muscle.
It was largely muscle. I'm about 180, 185 pounds right now. And so I added, in about 6 months, I added 60 pounds to my bench. I wasn't even able to deadlift. So, I hadn't done a deadlift max since 8th grade. And I was able to I got up to 380. And I couldn't even do deadlift, period, before that. So my previous max was 250 before the surgeries when I was in 8th grade. So I added
Okay.
130 pounds to my deadlift, and so when I fully recovered from my first ACL tear, my squat max was 225. And I was proud of it because I had to work up to even that. And then for the 1,000 pound club, which was 8 months later after the second tear, I ended up jumping all the way to 365. And so that was huge. My growth measurement wise was huge. My legs had grown 7.5 inches on the injured leg side and 8 inches on the good side in that time with Min. And my body and my weight, my mentality, everything transformed. And I probably wouldn't have been able to accomplish any of those things if wasn't able to have Min or the support that I had from my family. I told them my
Sure.
goals and they pushed me towards them,
And
and
then the last thing was
they
your
gave me the
state
resources.
champion.
So then I got to play baseball, and that was special.
And you knew you guys had a pact that you guys were going to state championship.
So the kids that were in my class, we had a very athletic class, and they were freshman year, they made it to the semifinals. Sophomore year, they made it to the championship. Junior year, there was some internal coaching problems, and it prevented them from probably going as far as they should. They made it to the semifinals again. And then senior year, I just felt like it was so special to be a part of the group. They were crazy talented. I had played club baseball with them growing up in middle school. I would compete against them, and then we ended up coming together at Blanchette. And what I had always noticed on so many of the sports teams was, and I would talk to my dad about it, was that they weren't missing the physicality and the athleticism part. And what they were missing was more of a guy who could lead the team and more of a guy who
Okay.
could take on that responsibility, because it was a lot more, I'm really good at baseball or I'm really good at basketball. And that's really what matters to me, rather than I'm going to listen to the coach. I'm going to be a part of a team and we're going to have success as a team. The baseball team was a little different because they came in as freshmen. They were always looking for the upperclassmen to do it. They were
Oh,
always looking for the
they were
upperclassmen to take on
followers.
that responsibility because they were young and they were new to the team. And so
Yeah.
none of them had ever really had to develop that skill. And then senior year, when we were all the big dogs, we were the seniors, it was our job to finally do it. And so that was really where I saw myself stepping in the most. I had observed some baseball things over the time that I thought I could help with. I was always good at base running. That's what they needed the most. They probably would have won the state championship freshman year if they had some better base running. But they had always been missing that piece that just brought everything together, more of as a friend and a messenger through the coach.
Yeah.
And that had always been what I excelled at. Because sometimes I wasn't always the most skilled guy, but I was usually one of the guys who could make my teammates better.
Sure.
Um, and so that was the role I expected to take on. I didn't expect to walk on the baseball team. And after missing so much time, I didn't expect to come back and be an all league player or anything like that. But I did expect to bring a certain factor that would connect both the team and the players. And what I was able to do that because of what I learned the several years being away. I was able to step back and see it from more of a different perspective on, well, these guys don't treat these guys very well, or these guys don't function as a team, even though they're crazy good athletes. And so I noticed that, and it would always be something I would talk to my dad about, and we had so many lengthy conversations about it. And so I wanted to make sure that we were a team, and we were. We had team dinners. We did it in football. We did it in baseball. We had a bunch of team
Sure.
dinners. We brought the team together, and we knew we had a chance to win the championship when we first started the season. And I was just happy to be along for the ride. Those guys had been
Matured
working on it forever.
and
And
you matured,
so
it sound like.
I
You
totally
became a
did.
leader. You matured.
And so I was able to join that, and I made sure that I made a difference in every game, even if I didn't get to see the field that much or whatever. And those guys, they were all incredible. I love them all, and it was special to be a part of. And I'm glad that I was able to return in the way that I did, and eventually make a small impact towards the success that we had as a team. It was
It
awesome.
sounds like you were a huge impact. And when I watched the video, I feel like I was there at the game when everyone's cheering. And I don't know where you're at in the baseball field, but are you the one running into the base and you made the home run or what?
So my friend was the one who got the hit. So my buddy
Okay.
Dylan, he was our catcher. He was one of our best hitters. So he hit the ball. It was the bottom of the seventh. So he got on base, and because there was two outs and we were tied, they take the catcher off. And so in case we go into the next inning, he's all set up and ready to go. So I went in to run for Dylan at the end of the game there. And then my other buddy Tyson, I'd been playing baseball with Tyson since we were 7. He got a hit after Dylan, and I was able to advance 2 bases. So there was a runner on first and third. So I was on third, and then they call a timeout before Carson comes in to hit, so they can change their pitcher. And I noticed that there's 3 pitches in the dirt in his warm-ups, which was unique for this guy. And so I asked my coach, I said, "What's my limits here?" And he said, "If you get a good jump, you can go on a pass ball." So I got my lead, and I knew it. I felt like I was going to get the opportunity based on what I had watched during the warm-ups. And then sure enough, on the first pitch, it was a ball at the backstop, and I was able to get a good jump. And I'd built up enough speed over the years that I was able to still get across home plate just fine.
And the crowd goes wild. You come
It was
in.
fun.
So you are thinking way before this, your scholarships, you would have probably had a sports scholarships, but you got some academic scholarships. And now tell me where you're at now.
So I always thought I could probably go play sports somewhere, maybe at JUCO or play at a D2 place somewhere if I had committed a lot of time to it. But then I was forced to shift, and I had always been a pretty good student. I ended up getting some academic scholarships to go to Weber, and I ended up ultimately picking the place. Me and my girlfriend decided on it together, and so now we're out here. And I get to watch life from a different perspective now because of how much I've grown physically, mentally, and spiritually on so many different things. It literally affects everything, and I've only grown. There's
Oh, you sound
so
like a older
it's
person
pretty
than
awesome.
19. Your parents must
Thank
be
you.
very proud. And tell me what you're studying. What is your goal? To be a physical therapist, to be a min or a doctor or
People always ask me if
a
I was going to do
pastor?
that now. People always ask me if I was going to be a physical therapist or something now. And I'm studying professional sales right now at Weber State. So they have a top 3 sales program in the country. And
Okay.
I've always enjoyed that because I love talking to people and I love
What do
helping
you want to
people.
sell someday?
I'm not sure. I would like to be in the sports realm. That would be awesome.
There's a lot.
But we'll see how it goes. It's fun, and I get to use what I learn all the time.
Yeah. And how many years that way? Is it 4 years? You have 4 or 6?
It's a 4-year major typically. I think I'm going to be done in 3.
Well, there's another goal you'll check off your list. And what is
Yeah,
your girlfriend doing?
so she's studying right now. She's studying political science. She'll be done in about 3 years too, so that she can go study pre-law and be a lawyer.
Oh, well, that's perfect. You don't have to work then. I'm just kidding.
I know, that's what I'm
You,
saying. And then I can really
yeah,
go coach. I would really
you
love
can
I
do
would really love
full-time
to get back
coaching.
into coaching, so then I can go coach a high school team.
That's awesome. Well, Josh, it was so nice meeting you. I think your story will resonate with several young athletes, young minded, as well as older people. I think you're a patient young man that has overcome a setback and came out stronger, not just physically, but mentally. And I think that's huge. And your error, you had to go through COVID times and it was 0 sports to overcoming this broken leg and 3 ACL surgeries. And then you have a great outcome. And I love your little outcome spirit, whatever you want to say. I think you're just an awesome young man. Your parents did very well with you. And I thank you for taking the time. Men talked highly of you. You were the first one. He said, you need to get him on your show. And I actually was going to reschedule today to work it out with his schedule, but then I didn't want to conflict if he last minute can't do it. He wants to talk to you. I know he wants to see you.
Min is awesome. He's actually helping my brother right now with some of his stuff, but he's pretty great. And the relationship that I got to build with Min was so awesome. I would go in and he would challenge me every day. I would go in with something new and he would give me a challenge that he knew I was going to fail at, and he knew that was going to make me go home and actually do it. And knew that was going to make me go home and try and better myself in that way. And it was hilarious. He made me a slideshow one of these days. He sent me a slideshow at school of me right after surgery. He sent me a video of myself shaking during the most basic exercise, and you can hear him laughing hysterically in the background because of how much I'm shaking. And so he built me a whole slideshow about my progress and sent it to me at school just to motivate me. And it was awesome. It's a relationship that you don't normally get with your physical therapist. No. And it was probably the biggest blessing of the whole journey. And patients like you make his job more challenging, and he's a great guy. And if you could, not putting any physical therapists down or anything, but if you could have a message to all the physical therapists out there, what is your message you would want to tell them? It would be to treat every patient like they're different. Everybody's body type is different. I learned about the hypermobility stuff. I learned how boys and girls' bodies are built differently and how to adjust for that athletic wise. And I learned ultimately that I was on the same program as the old lady. And so treating every patient like they're different and examining what their body type is, maybe going off the book a little bit. Min warned me and my dad the first day I walked in. He said, I'm a little off the book. And we said, all right, we trust you. And here you are. I transformed myself in a crazy way in such a short amount of time based on what he did. I progressed more in 3 months with Min than I did in 10 months with my traditional physical therapist. He was on the book all the time. I spent most of my time with a aide, just taking me through exercises. And so I didn't have a personal relationship with my first guy. Half the time he would miss my appointments and I would be with just the aide. And you just miss that connection. So he didn't really know me. And so he never got a chance to examine who I really was. He just made sure I checked all the boxes when the time came. Yeah. So I would say to be off the book and treat everybody like they're a little bit different. Be unique. Yeah. I like that. Be unique. Think outside the box. Not everyone's the same. I'm going to read this disclaimer real quick and then we'll log off. But thank you so much for your time, Josh. You're an amazing young man. Now I'm going to read the disclaimer. The information shared on this podcast is for educational and inspirational purposes only. It is not medical, psychological, or professional advice. Always consult with a qualified professional before making changes to your health, mindset, or lifestyle. You are responsible for your own decisions, actions, and results. Take what resonates with you today and leave what doesn't, and always do what's best